Now, during the Prohibition in the 1920s, Capone quickly became Chicago's biggest crime boss and public enemy #1.
The big boy himself. What's the hurry, Al? Where you're going, you'll have loads of time.
Now, Al Capone was an American gangster who attained notoriety during the Prohibition era in the United States.
When you hear the name Al Capone, you probably picture the legend, the undisputed king of jazz-age Chicago, a charming rogue who was more celebrity than criminal. He loved the attention, smiling for cameras at baseball games and making huge donations to charities, which earned him a reputation as some kind of modern-day Robin Hood. But the Hollywood story isn't even a pale shadow of the horrifying truth. Capone's empire wasn't just built on bootleg whiskey, it was built on a foundation of terror, torture, and bloodshed. His business was urban warfare, where Thompson's submachine guns settled disputes and murder was just the cost of doing business. These 10 facts reveal the brutal, unvarnished story of the violence he used to become America's public enemy #1. Fact 1. Murder was a business expense. To get a grip on Al Capone's violence, you have to understand the business. When the 18th Amendment outlawed alcohol in 1920, it didn't stop people from drinking, it just made it illegal. For gangsters like Capone and his mentor Johnny Torrio, this was a golden opportunity. They saw that one of America's biggest industries had just been handed over to anyone ruthless enough to take it. The profits were staggering. At his peak, Capone's entire criminal operation, including bootlegging, gambling, and brothels, was estimated to bring in an astronomical $100 million a year. That's over $1.5 billion in today's money. This incredible cash flow allowed Capone to buy fleets of cars, stockpile machine guns, and pay off city officials. But more importantly, it made murder a rational business decision. Taking out a rival wasn't just about revenge, it was about acquiring their territory, their speakeasies, and their profits. For Capone, violence wasn't personal. It was just a line item on the budget for building an empire. Fact 2. The buy from me or die policy. Once Capone had the infrastructure, he needed customers, and he had zero interest in fair competition. His sales pitch to Chicago's thousands of speakeasies was simple and terrifying. Buy his liquor or face the consequences. Those who refused or bought from rival gangs quickly learned what that meant. Capone's enforcers didn't just threaten, they unleashed a campaign of terror. Any place that defied the Chicago outfit was a target. Saloons and bars were bombed with such regularity that it became a citywide warning. By one estimate, as many as 100 people may have been killed in these bombings throughout the 1920s. This wasn't random chaos. It was a calculated strategy designed to create a monopoly through pure fear. Every explosion sent a clear message across the city's underworld. Dealing with anyone other than Capone could get your business, and everyone in it, blown to pieces. Fact 3. The beer wars were urban warfare. Capone's rise to power wasn't a quiet takeover, it was a series of violent conflicts known as the Chicago Beer Wars. This was nothing less than a small-scale civil war fought on the streets of a major American city. On one side was Capone's South Side outfit, and on the other were his main rivals, the North Side Gang, along with a collection of other criminal factions. The prize was bootlegging territory, and the battles were fought with shotguns and machine guns in broad daylight. Gangsters in armored cars would speed through neighborhoods, spraying rival breweries and storefronts with bullets. Capone's gang controlled the most profitable territory in the city, the downtown loop, packed with hotels, clubs, and wealthy patrons desperate for illegal booze. To protect and expand this turf, his gunmen turned Chicago's streets into a regular battleground, where the body count was a measure of success. Hundreds of gangsters died in these wars as Capone fought to make his Chicago outfit the undisputed ruler of the city's criminal world. Fact 4. Systematically erasing the competition. Capone's war against the North Side Gang was a bloody and strategic campaign to take out its leadership. A major turning point came in 1924 with the assassination of the North Side Gang's leader, Dean O'Banion. O'Banion, who ran his gang out of a flower shop, made a fatal mistake. He double-crossed Capone's mentor, Johnny Torrio, in a brewery deal. Days later, assassins walked into O'Banion's shop and shot him dead while he was clipping chrysanthemums. After an attempt on his own life, a wounded Johnny Torrio retired and handed the entire operation to a 26-year-old Al Capone. O'Banion's successor, Jaime Weiss, swore revenge and escalated the war, only to be gunned down by Capone's men in 1926. But the chain of succession took a strange turn with the next North Side leader, Vincent the Schemer Drucci. He wasn't taken out in a gangland hit. Instead, in 1927, he was shot and killed by a police detective during a heated argument in the back of a squad car. Each death, whether by a rival's bullet or a cop's, destabilized the North Side Gang, paving the way for its final leader, George Bugs Moran, to inherit a badly weakened organization. Fact 5. The Hawthorne Hotel attack and Capone's revenge. By 1926, the war reached a new level of audacity. Jaime Weiss and the North Side Gang decided to hit Capone where he lived and worked, his Cicero headquarters at the Hawthorne Hotel. In a stunning daytime assault, a caravan of cars packed with gunmen drove past the hotel, unleashing a storm of lead. An estimated 1,000 rounds from Thompson's submachine guns and shotguns tore into the building's lobby and restaurant. Capone, who was meeting in a back room, was thrown to the floor by his bodyguard and narrowly escaped the carnage. The brazen attack showed just how far his enemies were willing to go. But Capone's response was swift and merciless. He knew the attack was orchestrated by Jaime Weiss. Within weeks, Capone's gunmen laid a sophisticated trap. As Weiss walked toward O'Banion's old flower shop, a place of symbolic importance, shooters opened fire from multiple, carefully chosen positions. Weiss was killed instantly. The message was brutal and effective. If you come for the king, you best not miss. Fact 6. The prosecutor caught in the crossfire. Capone's violence was usually directed at other gangsters, but in April 1926, it spilled over in a way that shocked the nation. His gunmen, patrolling in Cicero, opened fire on a car they believed was carrying rival mobsters. Inside, however, was not just a gangster, but also William McSwiggan, an active Cook County prosecutor. McSwiggan was killed in the hail of bullets, creating a massive public outcry. The murder of a state prosecutor put intense new pressure on law enforcement to finally do something about Capone. It was one thing for gangsters to kill each other, but killing a public official was an attack on the system itself. In the investigation that followed, police raided Capone's home. While they found no evidence connecting him to the murder, they did discover financial ledgers and records. This was a crucial turning point. Though it didn't solve the McSwiggan murder, it gave federal investigators the first real ammunition for the tax evasion case that would eventually bring Capone down. The story of Capone's brutality only gets more intense from here, culminating in one of the most infamous crimes in American history. If you're fascinated by the dark side of history and want to see more deep dives into the world of true crime, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Fact 7. The bounty on Capone's head. Not everyone in Chicago's underworld was intimidated by Capone. A rival Sicilian boss named Joe Aiello was determined to take a piece of the bootlegging racket for himself. To do this, he put a public bounty on Capone's head, reportedly offering a huge sum of money to anyone who would kill him. This triggered a series of assassination attempts, but Capone's network was always one step ahead. Would-be assassins were identified and eliminated. The feud escalated when Aiello allegedly tried to have a chef poison Capone at his favorite restaurant. In retaliation, Capone's men targeted Aiello's allies and operations. The vendetta finally ended in 1930. As Aiello exited an apartment building, he was caught in a deadly crossfire. Gunmen opened fire from at least 2 positions with machine guns, hitting him dozens of times. Aiello's challenge to Capone's empire was over. Fact 8. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre. On February 14, 1929, Capone's war against Bugs Moran reached its horrifying climax. 7 men associated with Moran's North Side operation were gathered in a garage on North Clark Street. Capone's men had been watching the garage and chose this day to strike. 4 assassins, 2 of them dressed as police officers, entered the garage pretending it was a routine raid. The Moran gang members, thinking it was just another police shakedown, offered no resistance and calmly let themselves be lined up against a brick wall. Then, the officers and their plain-clothed accomplices opened fire with Thompson's submachine guns and a shotgun, executing all 7 men in a brutal hail of bullets. The main target, Bugs Moran, narrowly escaped. He was running late and saw the police car outside, deciding to stay away. Capone himself was in Florida, giving him a perfect alibi, and he was never charged. But everyone knew who was responsible. Moran himself told reporters, "Only Capone kills like that." The graphic photos of the massacre shocked the public and solidified Capone's reputation as America's public enemy number 1. Fact 9. A shield of corruption. So how did Capone get away with bombings, assassinations, and a massacre in broad daylight? The answer is simple. He bought the law. A huge portion of his profits went directly into the pockets of police, judges, and politicians. At his peak, Capone was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on bribes, ensuring his operations were protected from top to bottom. This corruption was so blatant and widespread that when Capone's men committed murder, the police often looked the other way. Investigations were sabotaged, witnesses were intimidated, and charges were dropped. This shield of corruption meant Capone's bootlegging operation could function with a level of open violence that ordinary criminals could never imagine, making his reign of terror possible. Fact 10. Violence was his undoing. Ironically, the same brutality that built Capone's empire was also what brought it down. While he was never convicted of murder, the relentless and spectacular violence, especially the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, created a national outcry. The newsreels and newspaper photos of the Garage Massacre horrified the American public and made Chicago a symbol of lawlessness. This public outrage reached the highest levels of government. Newly elected President Herbert Hoover made it a top priority for federal agencies to get Capone off the streets. A multi-agency attack was launched, combining the efforts of prohibition agents to disrupt his liquor operations and IRS investigators to scrutinize his finances. The public and political backlash against the bloodshed gave federal authorities the mandate they needed to pursue him relentlessly. In the end, it wasn't a smoking gun that took him down, but a paper trail. The government's case for tax evasion, built from the very investigations that began in the wake of his violence, was what finally sent Al Capone to prison. Al Capone was imprisoned not for the hundreds of violent acts he orchestrated, but for failing to pay taxes on the income from those crimes. He was eventually sent to the strict, isolating island prison of Alcatraz, where his power and influence were severely cut down. His health crumbled due to advanced syphilis, an infection he likely contracted as a young man. The disease eroded his mind, and by the time of his release in 1939, doctors and family described him as having severe cognitive impairment, sometimes with the mental capacity of a child. He died in 1947, a shadow of the fearsome figure he once was. The legend of Capone as a charismatic outlaw persists, but the truth of his operation is a story written in blood. He was a pioneer of organized crime, who showed that with enough money, anything could be bought, and with enough violence, anything could be taken. His brutal legacy is a stark reminder that behind the romanticized myth of the gangster often lies a far darker and more violent reality.